5 reasons people may visit your church this Christmas. Coming up now on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Here we go.
Welcome back from Thanksgiving holiday break.
Yeah.
Hope you
refreshed and full of turkey.
Yeah. It was a good one. I hope for those of you who live in parts of the world that celebrate Thanksgiving, which is the majority of you listening to this podcast, hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. For those of you who live in parts of the world where you don't celebrate Thanksgiving on the 4th Thursday of November, you missed out. It's a good holiday. It's my favorite one, actually.
Your favorite holiday is Thanksgiving? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. You like is it just the food aspect? You like the football? Is that it for you? You like
the all of that. To me, it's all of the best parts of a holiday without. Now, I recognize there may be some women listening to this podcast who would beg to differ. I'm not the one who cooks. I make deviled eggs. Okay. But I don't really have to cook anything else. So to me, there's no stress. But for the people doing the cooking, I think it probably is a lot of stress. But Christmas, there's a lot of cooking at Christmas too, but also all of the pressure of the gifts.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's additional services you're going to and rushing here and rushing there. And Thanksgiving doesn't have that same level of baggage. It's like, go be with family, eat the food, watch the Dallas Cowboys hopefully win, which they did this year, and and then just enjoy yourself. So yes, it's my favorite for those reasons.
Okay, yeah, it's good. I like the Thanksgiving food. It's good stuff. Too. Yeah, things you only eat once a year.
Yeah, but speaking of Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about Christmas today. Today we're talking about Christmas on the podcast. Oh, before we get too far into the episode, before we hop into that, just a reminder to those of you who are already subscribers to the Healthy Churches Toolkit that we have a workshop coming up. When this released, it will be tomorrow. So it's Thursday, December the 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are talking about creating a year-long preaching calendar. We've got a new tool that's releasing alongside of that. You will not want to miss that. If you are listening to this podcast and you are not subscribed to the toolkit, go subscribe to the toolkit so you can join us on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern for that, to take advantage of that resource and to watch that. It'll be about 45-minute training that we'll do live. So join us for that. All right. Yeah. So today we're talking about...
do that by going to malphursgroup.com.
Yeah.
And then click right there at the top of the page. There's an option for you to click into more information about the toolkit and to get registered.
Yeah, and in fact, just a side note on that, right now, from now through the end of the year, you can save $300 off a plus plan on the toolkit.
How do they do that?
They don't have to do anything. They just
built in.
If they go, it's built in. They just click the button to register, and automatically take it off for you.
Wow. So, okay, we're running a special, folks. malphursgroup.com. Go get toolkit today. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we're talking about Christmas today, and we're talking about reasons why people might show up to your church on Christmas. And this is true actually all year round. Spoiler alert. These are the 5 reasons why anyone would come to any church at any time. But these things I think are amplified during the Christmas season. So they're the same reasons all year round. And we do want to give credit. This idea is not original to me. And in fact, it's not even original to this book, I don't think, because I had reached out to them and said, "Where did you hear this?" And they were like, "We don't know where we heard it, but we heard it." So I'm going to give credit to them. And it's Tyler Smith from Texan Church wrote a book called Boomerang. And in the book, they talk about these 5 Ds. So I want to give credit where credit's due. But I have found this to resonate really well, both anecdotally and with the churches that I work with over the years. These things ring true. So we're going to run through these 5 Ds, these 5 reasons why people might show up to your church. And again, these are true all year round, but I think they are especially true at Christmas time.
Yeah. And this whole topic kind of came about because there's an article this week in the Christian Post talking about a surge in Bible sales happening here at the end of 2024. one of the reasons I don't think they really know why. And I've linked to it in this week's article that you can get at malforsgroup.com/269. They don't necessarily know why, but one of the suggestions is because people are feeling anxious. There's just anxiety in, like, the United States, perhaps Western culture, at least, with, political things and social things. And people are looking for answers. They're looking for solace. And some of those folks are saying, maybe I can find this in the Bible, in the Holy Bible, in the good book, Scott. Yep. And perhaps they're picking up a few more copies, which is always, year after year in the United States, the top-selling book, more Bibles sold than any other one book every single year. And so that there's a connection here between what Scott's setup just was, in addition to buying a Bible, for the same reasons people might say, I think I want to maybe get into what this book might have to say to help me. They think about church the same way. And so that's what led me and Scott then to go, you know what? Why don't we talk about the 5 Ds? Let's run through those again so that you, the leader in your church, can have this in mind.
Yes.
Knowing why people might be coming to your church this Christmas is the better way. It's a more strategic way for you then to get to know them and to be able to hopefully help meet their needs, to answer these life questions that they might be coming with. Introduce them to Jesus, introduce them to fellowship in your church where they can not just benefit during the holiday season, but for the rest of their lives and eternity, Scott.
Yeah, that's right. As we dive into these, I wanted one last quick thing on this before we get into them. The advice I'll often give to churches when I work with them and we talk about this is that usually there might be 1 or 2 of these that is either especially true in your particular community, just based on certain data trends or things psychographics of your community and so on, or 2, something that your church is particularly capable at addressing. So your church might be, we're really good at dealing with this particular thing. So as we go through these 5 Ds, maybe just be filtering that and go, this is especially true in my community, and my church is especially good at addressing this issue. And then take that next step further, my advice would be, and apply that this Christmas season. Don't just go through the motions and light the Advent candles and not be thinking about who is sitting in the pews and why they are there. So that's why we're talking about this today. So with that said, let's maybe dive into these.
Let's get started. The first one is development. I think the word, it's a very broad word, and it's kind of a broad definition or how they're using it.
Yeah, let's just be honest. They wanted 5 Ds. So
the other 4 Ds
all start with
are more direct, but and there's a 6th D for you, direct. But yeah, in this one, so development. We're talking about a lot of this might be centered around family development. People, they've maybe had kids. That's one of the big reasons a lot of people, or at least perhaps people that might have been raised in a church or had previous church experience and left, they have kids and they're like, we should get back to church.
I want my kid to have a traditional church experience.
It wasn't as bad maybe as I think it was. So let's get the kids in there. Or it could be marriage things. It could be that people have gotten married and they go into a church, or some other sort of maybe interpersonal or life.
Yeah, or our marriage isn't going very well. Yeah. So let's get back to church as a family, and maybe things will improve for us.
Developing relationships, developing maybe a centeredness in what is good, developing or redeveloping a relationship with Jesus if they are aware of what that is, or with God or spirituality. A lot of these things, are what people are feeling or sensing and looking for. And then, they wander into your church, and that is a huge opportunity for whatever is going on in their life, whatever their felt need is, for you then to be able to come alongside them, introduce them to Christ, and help address that.
Yeah, we put this one up top because I think this is maybe the one that would be most true. I mean, all of these are true at Christmas time, but this is maybe amplified more than the others are even at Christmas time, where people have this nostalgic sense. They associate Christmas. I mean, it is Christ's Mass. That's where we get the word. So I think people have this attachment emotionally or even in nostalgia to church things at this time of year. Mm-hmm. And so people might have this sense of like, I should go somewhere for a candlelight service, or, I kind of want to get in there and sing some Christmas carols. So take advantage of that opportunity to share the gospel with folks, because now more than maybe any time of the year, maybe even more than Easter time, people have this sense of, I really, I'd love to get into a church, So tap into that. This is especially true, I think, in places like the South, and maybe less true in places that are totally post-Christian, like the Northeast or Pacific Northwest or in Europe. In places where cultural Christianity still exists to some extent, this is especially true.
Yeah. All right. Our second D is displacement. People may have moved. They're in a city, or some other change has happened in where they live. In larger cities, you might have moved across town, and it's still prohibitive to maybe go to your old church. But Scott, you mentioned a minute ago, some churches are uniquely established or set up to handle certain things. And displacement sometimes is one of those churches that are near military installations or universities. For our global listeners, we have a lot of international churches that just have large displacement of people that are moving around, even refugees in some areas. But in those churches, that's just kind of their normal rhythm. People are not there for too terribly long, maybe a few years, and then they're back out. And so they've been able to establish ministries that are really able to come alongside people quickly and minister to them during their time there. But people moving, that is one of the biggest things that happens in someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage, children, and moving are huge deals. They've taken emotional toll, and especially, I think it's one of those things. There's a bit of kind of endorphin or adrenaline that happens with something new. If there's a positive aspect to it for people, they're excited about the move, and you get there and you're like, wow, this is great. We love everything. And then, a few weeks or months go by, and then the reality sets in. Like I don't feel connected anymore. I've lost relationships, or I've lost space and rhythms. And so that's just one of those key reasons that people might be looking for something that's established, that can have something to it that is predictable and comfortable. And the church should be a great place for that sense to be felt.
Yeah, I think this is true. I think even when you just look at the United States and just in migration, we've seen a lot of this, especially since the pandemic. There's been a lot of movement, especially from California to literally every other state. But not just that. There's people moving from rural places to cities, from cities to rural places. There is a lot of movement within the United States over the last, half decade or so. And so one of the things that people are looking for is community. People move to a place for a new job, or, for lower cost of living or whatever, but they don't necessarily have family connections in that place, and they are looking for community. And so they have a willingness to try out a church for the purely selfish reason of just trying to be because they're hungry for that connection. And so Christmas time is a great time when people will go, maybe they moved within the last 6 months and they haven't really connected with anybody, and they might go, well, maybe I'll try going somewhere. So I would encourage you to not just try to shuffle people in and out the door during those candlelight services this year. Offer some hot cocoa and some chances for people to connect and make those relational connections that people are so hungry for. So displacement is about meeting that relational need that people have and they are looking to satisfy.
Yeah. Yep. So the next one is one of the more negative ones. Actually, these last three are all rather disheartening.
But, we start with the positive ones.
Yeah. And so this D is death. I think there's a couple other D's that fit in here as well. Disease or diagnosis. So yeah, this is just an unfortunate reality in a fallen world that we deal with. And so it might not even be this person that is experiencing, like this. Hopefully, as church leaders, we remember there's people that are going to be there that maybe lost a loved one a year ago, or they lost a loved one during the Christmas season, and it could have been decades ago, but that's still just a hurt that they carry with them. So all of this kind of wraps up into this D, that it's just sometimes not the most fun time of year for people, either because of something they're presently experiencing or something from the past. But it's also something that may drive them to look for this comfort or this solace or this understanding or answers, and where better than in the person of Christ, and in God's word and in his church, his families. It's a sad time of year for a lot of people, but the church should be what the church is supposed to be, and the one that provides comfort and answers.
Yeah, I think it can be that they've lost someone. It can also be that they've gotten a diagnosis. That's another D that I think kind of falls underneath this, but when people have these existential questions about life, like what happens when I die, or is there something more, or even just the sense of meaninglessness, that nothing really matters, what I do in this life doesn't make a difference. People are looking for an answer to that question, and what better time of year than Christmas to be addressing this question? And for a lot of you, if you follow a liturgical schedule, this past Sunday, you lit a candle of hope, the first week of Advent. So people are looking for that hope. What does that mean? And the coming of Christ, the Christ child, is God with us. It is hope incarnate. Speaking to that and having an awareness of that, and a pastoral sensitivity to that on Sunday mornings and throughout the Advent season is important.
Yeah. So our fourth D is disaster, which is another bit of a broad term, I think, because a lot of things, might kind of fall under this heading. Most recently, we had all these hurricanes that went through the South and Southeast. So that highly qualifies under the term. That could be driving people in those parts of the country that are affected in the United States to get into church or reconnect in church. Personal disaster. I mean, things that happen in people's lives. Perhaps also that fall into one of the other categories that has led to displacement, has ended in death, these kinds of things. But there's just, things that have caused trauma or some unexpected situation that they're going to have to deal with on a rather significant scale. Just all, I think, kind of dump under the disaster category. But again, it's negative things happening in people's lives where you feel out of control. Perhaps it's stretched resources beyond how you think things, the ends might not be meeting. And just left you with a lot of unanswered questions. And people, by the grace of God, by the draw of the Holy Spirit, maybe would pull them in to find where they can get, again, peace and comfort and hope in your church.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it could be a natural disaster, but it could be, as you said, a personal disaster, whether that's an addiction struggle or, a life wiped out by some sort of disaster, either of your own creation or something that's not your fault. Sometimes life wipes you out. You live long enough, you'll experience any number of things that aren't really your fault, but are painful. And in those situations, people are looking for the comfort of Christ. Or just comfort. They're looking for comfort, period. And maybe they're in a situation where they have chased comfort in any number of other areas and found it not sustaining it. Mm-hmm. And not true comfort. So perhaps you've got people sitting in the pews this Advent season, this Christmas season, who need comfort, and they need the presence of Christ embodied in the people of Christ. And so don't rush people out the door. Bring people in. People are lonely this time of year, and they may be going through any number of issues, personal disasters, or here in my area, there's still people recovering from natural disasters. Yeah, for sure. And
humans are good at kind of making things look like it's okay, and especially in an unfamiliar environment. Fitting under some of the previous categories that you could have people.
Someone's probably not going to come in wearing a shirt that says, "I'm struggling with an addiction."
Yeah. Homelessness, food insecurity. There's all kinds of things, but they could come in still with a smile on their face and, in clothes that you wouldn't think there's anything wrong with them. So of course we all know this. The Christian faith is about relationship with Christ, relationship with one another in fellowship as the church. And so the hard part is initiating that, developing that first piece, that making a human connection with somebody that can lead into deeper fellowship. So we can't just be like, "Hey, glad you're here. Welcome," and then shake the pastor's hand on the way out. We just have to do whatever we can strategically to try to get to know people. All right. Our fifth D, Scott, divorce. It's unfortunately, it's a big one. It has been for a long time. It still is. Though, I read something the other day, Scott. I don't know, don't fact check me on this, but I was talking about like almost folklore kinds of things that people continue to repeat that aren't true. And it said like that more than 50% of divorces and more than 50% of marriages end in divorce is actually not true. But we keep repeating that. I don't know.
I know the background of this statistic. Yeah.
Of course you do. I really am not surprised that you do know that. Not because you have some connection to divorce, because you always know that kind of thing, regardless of what it is.
Okay, so now again, don't totally fact check me because I won't get the numbers correct. I do think that number is correct on average,
Okay.
but it isn't that 50% of all first marriages don't end in divorce. Okay?
Okay.
So
A smaller percentage of people get divorced, but if they get divorced, they're likely
they're
to get
more
divorced
likely
again,
to get correct.
driving up the
Multiple
average.
times,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So,
I have also read, and don't again. This
like
is,
if you've gotten one divorce, you're much more likely to get a second one, and if you've had a second one, you're even more likely to get a third one. So
you're
like the
blowing up
more
the
time
average
you've
for
been
all of us.
divorced,
Yeah.
correct. So that 50% number is, I think, is roughly correct when you account for all marriages.
Just have to dig deeper on that. Yeah.
But it's not most. It isn't 50% of first marriages.
Yeah.
It's a.
I also think it had been floated out there that it was the same in or out of the church, which again makes people think that half of all Christian marriages also end in divorce, and that's not true.
No, it's not true, and I think it's actually the same issue at play. So when you have multiple divorces, it is true that people in the church roughly follow the same. Actually, I think when you dig deeper on those numbers, it's like people who attend church more frequently, those numbers are significantly different from just people who would call themselves Christians. So
yes.
I think if you just call yourself a Christian, when all of those people, those numbers match pretty closely.
Yeah.
The first marriage and subsequent marriage rates as the general population. But when you narrow in, not to say that those people aren't Christians, but when you narrow in on people who are actively engaged in church, the numbers shift pretty dramatically, pretty quickly.
You always have to dig deeper on those things because even that article that I mentioned at the top of the show about the Bible sales, it hits that stat later on also, because like, I don't know, the average American household has like 3.4 Bibles in it. But when you get down to people, there's a huge gap between people that call themselves a Christian and the people that hold a Christian worldview.
I have like
and
three
service.
just sitting on my...
Keeping the average high.
Just sitting on my desk.
Yeah. Anyway, we've diverged beyond, but divorce is obviously it's a big thing in culture.
It is a big thing,
and it is a reason that people would be looking for a Bible or going to a church, stepping into a church.
Yeah, that's true. I think even there's some practical reality here. If Mr. and Mrs. Smith aren't Mr. and Mrs. Smith anymore, and they were a Christmas and Easter couple. They didn't really ever go to church except, a couple times a year. Well, if they got divorced this year, Mrs. Smith doesn't want to go to a candlelight service at the same service as Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
So there is some practical reality of some people when they get a divorce, maybe they're not even looking to connect in a church, but they're just going to a different one because they don't want to be in the same place as their ex-spouse.
Yeah.
And so there are those people sitting in your church too, people who they maybe don't even know that they're looking for something. They just know they don't want to be at the place where their ex goes to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
who gets the church in the settlement? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You get the house, I get the church.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make light of that, but depending on how involved, maybe Mr. and Mrs. Smith were really involved at their church.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go through a divorce like that, for a lot of people who have gone through that, they lose their church family.
Yeah, right.
Maybe both spouses do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like changing your job. Moving churches is not like changing your job. When you've been somewhere for any period of time, you have relationships, you have connections. It's deeper than that. It's spiritual.
Right.
So
yeah,
that can be really hard.
There's a friend group. I mean, it's all of these things have been well talked about and displayed in movies and TV shows. I mean, things get divided. When people split up, things get divided. And that includes the place of worship, includes their friend group and their support group and all kinds of, it's horrible. It's a terrible thing.
We touched on this with development, but I want to touch on it here briefly too. This divorce can also be people who are thinking about divorce as well. Families that are
troubled marriage.
Troubled marriages. So just, especially, and then the holidays make this a hard time of year also because, the number one cause for divorce, at least in the US, I don't know if this is true internationally, is money fights and money problems. And the holidays are an expensive time of year for families, especially if they've got kids. So, families that are on the brink and teetering may be feeling that even more during the holiday season.
Yeah.
Just have that awareness that there are maybe couples sitting in the pews or in the chairs who are very close to things not working out. And what are we doing to support those families?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Kind of a little bit of a quick overview, but the big picture, the big idea here, don't miss the opportunity you have this holiday season to truly connect with people, find out what's going on in their lives, introduce them to Jesus and into the fellowship of his church, because it's a life-changing thing. And we don't want to get caught up in producing the Christmas time of year.
Yes.
Miss out on the reason for the season. And it's just, it's cliched, but
this is the trap. No, this is the trap in church is like, how can we make this year's thing perfect? So we get so wrapped up sometimes in the aesthetic of it. And I don't mean to make it sound like, don't forget the reason for the season in a hackneyed sort of way. But I'm saying don't forget the people who need the reason for the season. And don't get so caught up in either the tradition of it, if you tend towards that direction, or in the coolness factor of it, if your church tends towards that side of things, that you forget like the simplicity of it, the simplicity of what that moment was, and the simplicity of the answer that people are looking for, which is hope and comfort and joy and peace, all of these things that Christ brought incarnate.
Yeah, amen. All right. So, hey, before we go, if you're already on the website, maybe listening to this, or if you're on YouTube watching this, down below in the description is a link over to themalforsgroup.com. Click into the toolkit. You can get a 7-day trial. There's a ton of resources in there that are going to be helpful for your church, not only maybe preparing for this Advent season, but into planning for next year, and really maximizing every opportunity that you have to connect with people in a variety of ways and mediums. And at malforsgroup.com/269 is this week's show notes overviewing the 5 Ds that we just talked about with you. And a link back to a previous episode that we went into a little bit more depth and had a different angle on these as well. So you can be thinking about that as we go into 2025. So, Scott, I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a merry beginning to the Advent season. We've got just a couple more episodes this year, so stay tuned in to the Church Revitalization
2 more,
podcast.
Right? Is that right?
What?
2 more?
2 more, yeah.
2 more after this one?
After this one, just 2 more.
Yeah. We'll warn you. We're gonna take we've not really ever done this, I don't think, in the past. Usually we've pushed to have something go out, but this year we're gonna take the holidays off.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. We're gonna take 2 weeks off.
Hey,
I don't think we've ever taken 2 weeks off before. I don't think.
No, we've not done that. It'll be weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be weird.
Thanks for tuning in to the Church Revitalization Podcast, everybody. We'll see you again next week.